On today's show, we've got Christina Force. Christina is a UK-born, New Zealand-based photo mentor. Previously working in London at ad agencies, becoming an agent, and then setting up the first photographer's agent inside of New Zealand. Inside of New Zealand? Well, we'll go with it. She now works with photographers to reboot, focus their brand, focus their energy. Christina, welcome to the show, and I'm so sorry I fluffed the intro.
Hi, Tom.
I will say also, fluff the intro for the 30,000th time. I just couldn't keep you waiting any longer, so apologies. I am genuinely so thrilled to have you on the show. Thank you so much for giving up your time.
So much suspense, Tom. It's great to be here.
I know. Well, listen, I obviously, full disclosure, we should probably clear this straight away. I am currently working with you, and I am having just a mind-changing, just a perspective distorting, an amazing time. I come away from our calls feeling like I am on top of the world. And so I would love to introduce you to everyone who listens to this show. Would you mind obviously doing that introduction? I think you'll do it far better than I, but also kind of just fill people in on what it is you do.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Started in advertising in London back in, I'm not even going to say when, 1,000 years ago. And ended up moving from advertising into photography, became an assistant stylist, did a few things. When I moved to Sydney, I decided I didn't want to be in advertising anymore, and wanted to move on to the photography side, and ended up, I was working with one of those photographers who was an amazing guy, and called Graham McCarter, and he basically saw me. I was literally engrossed in conversation on set, with the clients, the art directors, when I should have been actually tweaking the wardrobe. And he got a bit frustrated with me. And at the end of the gig said, Christina, I think you need to be my agent, not my stylist. So that was my introduction to being an agent. I became his agent in Sydney. He was a Scottish photographer, actually. And from there, when I moved to New Zealand, I discovered there wasn't any... there were no agents here at all. And so I thought, okay, I need to do that here. I am still married to an advertising creative. And we knew everyone in advertising. And, when I moved to New Zealand, I kept bumping into people I'd worked with at Saatchi's London. And so it just kind of came naturally to me because I understood their world, and ran that photographer's agency for, I think it was about 18 years, sold it. I was sick of sort of the hard selling, having to answer the phone at 11 at night, but really enjoyed building photographers' careers, and always wished as an agent that I had more time for that aspect. And so I started Folio Consulting. And I was getting work from all around the world when I was an agent here. It wasn't sustainable just to be repping photographers in New Zealand. And so I had friends who are art buyers and creatives all around the world, and they started recommending photographers to come and talk to me. And so it just built from there. But I think my main focus was realizing that when photographers were asking me to do their folios, they didn't even know who they were speaking to. And they didn't know what their best work was. And sometimes they were selling themselves as still life photographer when they actually loved shooting on location outdoors. And they just thought that's how they made money, and therefore they should keep selling that. And as an agent, I'd seen that with the photographers I developed, that you can't do that. You can't try to be something you're not. You can, but it's not as competitive, to be quite honest. So I just started working with photographers right from that kind of grassroots. Who are you? Who the hell are you? Let's dig into that and uncover who you are. And then we can make some decisions about who you should be targeting. And then we can make some decisions about how you market yourself. And so that's how my business grew, I guess.
So what is it now that you are offering? Because obviously I think you're probably, best known for the kind of the program, right? With the Blitz. And do you want to explain what the Blitz is?
Yeah. So
because obviously to us in the UK, we're kind of going, seems a bit like old history, that.
I know, it's terrible, isn't it? It's my advertising years. I think I come up with names for things. I can't help myself. Anyway, what would happen was I would have a photographer want to consult to me, and they would show me the work they would show me, right? They would say, this is who I am. You know, my agent and I have decided I'm a luxury travel photographer, so I want help with that. And what would happen is through the course of working with them, I would discover pretty much like I just said, work over here that they hadn't even shown me, but kind of came out. And I would say, hang on a minute, what about this? And they'd say, oh, no, that's not what my agent and I agreed. We've decided I'm in luxury travel. And I'm like, yeah, but you've got this incredible, raw, high energy, beautiful, energetic, I just said that, you know, gorgeous, gritty work. Why is that not in your folio? Well, it's not luxury travel. And I just got frustrated. So I said, right, I'm not working with any photographers until I have assessed who they are, but, you know, back to roots. So the Blitz is where I only look at 300 images. I could literally do it with 20. And I just ask for a diverse array of work, anything they're sharing, because obviously if they're sharing it, I need to look at it, and anything they've got hidden, you know, little personal projects they love doing but don't think are relevant. Usually they're very relevant. And that comes to me. I've just finished one, actually. I was just talking to a photographer in New York and literally just finished a Blitz. And I honestly felt like I was just going to this whole world. But there was a lot of stuff I had to remove to get to that world, you know? And so it's a kind of a case of just kind of honing, culling. I use the word cull. That's another terrible word. And just really intuitively just saying yes, no, wow, sorting it out quite quickly, not overthinking it. It's, you know, from 30 years of working with advertising creatives and photographers that have got me to this point. And so it's extremely intuitive. But at the end, I look at the ones that made the wow folder, and those images are where we focus. Yeah, so sometimes there are red herrings, you know, which are images which don't fit with the main body of work I've identified or the visual voice I've identified. But the job is for me to identify the visual voice. And that really is our benchmark for everything. And from there, we can say, these are the kind of personal projects you can be making. These are the kind of clients you can be targeting. You know, this is where you need to focus your energies. And it's really helpful because it kind of gives that clarity and direction. It's a signpost, you know? And there's no reason that style and voice can't change moving forward. I think all photographers should be developing and playing and trying different looks and feels. But what you put out there to the public, to the people you want work from, needs to be consistent. So if it's going to change, it needs to change either gradually or there needs to be a lot more to back it up. So we start with something. And sometimes I just say to photographers, just start there and then you can move it if you want. But if you've only got one spectacular image that looks really great, but there's nothing like it, it's just going to completely throw people. So the Blitz is about really getting that visual voice established.
I think for most, and this is obviously why we're working together. We're not going to talk about me because obviously the people on listening to the podcast are absolutely sick to the back teeth of me. But I think that's interesting for so many photographers is that most of us will get quite a long way into our careers and just kind of keep going, whether it's through habit or just not knowing where we're going, or we just kind of end up doing this or that, or thinking that we should be going down that route. It's so useful to have an impartial external voice. Because the problem is, I think, especially a lot of the time when we will speak to loved ones or family or friends or other photographers, they're somehow invested.
Yeah.
You won't ring a stranger and say, "Hey, do you mind helping me with my focus or anything?" Because it needs to be an in-depth chat. I would imagine you get a lot of photographers reaching out effectively with the subject line "help."
Yeah, I get tomes actually.
Tomes.
Tomes.
Yes, tomes. I have
sorry,
emails.
I did spell my name wrong.
I have emails that reveal life journeys. I mean, the stuff that photographers share with me is quite remarkable, but it's obviously all treated very confidentially. But yeah,
I was going to say, spread the goss.
Yeah, spread the word.
No,
yeah.
don't, because it might be my goss. Let's
Yeah,
not.
there
No,
you
whoa.
go.
Stop. No, but it's a real skill to be able to also help the photographers open up to the point where this is going to be helpful, because it's I think photographers talk a lot, right? Or it might just be me, but photographers do talk a lot, and but we talk to a lot of people about a lot of things, and I don't think really, if I wonder how many times, if people are listening to this, I wonder how many times they've sat down and over the course of a few months spoken to an impartial voice about the guidance and the focus and stuff like that. And I feel that it's just been, I mean, I personally have obviously found it incredibly helpful. But I feel that your skill is not in just being able to help the photographers, but actually to be able to sympathize, to be able to hear, and to be able to actually completely understand from every side of the fence, really. I feel that's why, because I've worked with different mentors, and absolutely no shade. You've all been amazing. But I will say with Christina, it's been something different. And it's been, I think it's because you do truly understand every kind of facet of what it is we do.
Yeah, I mean, my friends and my family were the advertising world, and they still are. And so I know, literally, they say, don't they, when you're marketing to someone, what keeps them awake at night? I can tell you that because I'm married to one, and and then I also, having been an agent for 20 years, and then being a consultant, I have heard pretty much everything there is to hear from photographers that they've been through and are going through. So, I do feel like I do understand both sides of the picture. To go back to your point about the Blitz and how some photographers have been working for many, many years in the commercial industry. I work with lots of photographers, some who are just kind of starting from their assistant journey and, breaking into the advertising world, right up to people who have been shooting for 30 years in the ad world and editorial worlds and beyond. So one of the things I see in the ones who've been doing it for a while, who often have agents as well, is that they have allowed other people to guide their career and they've lost themselves. And sometimes what that does is that takes their passion with it. The passion's gone because they've lost who they are, and their agent's forgotten who they are as well, because the photographer's not been kind of driving the bus, as we say, or captaining the ship. So often, you get these jobs from clients and it's like, oh, that's not what I would normally do, but I'll do it because they trust me. And, oh, I've gone in this direction, and that's great. But it also can result in you being down a path that you never really intended to go down and don't enjoy as much as where you started. So, my job is pulling them back to that.
How do you do that? I mean, what techniques and exercises do you have that allow photographers to, to find out what their true passion is again?
We start with the Blitz, which is because honestly, they can tell me when I first meet with photographers. I often do like just a half-hour free call with them just to kind of understand them a bit. And I'll often ask them where they want to go and what they want to do. And they'll say stuff, right? And then I look at their work, then I Blitz their work, and I'll see sometimes someone else. And the work is almost always the honest, will often give me the honest answer. There'll be stuff that's trying to be something else and trying to go somewhere else, but often it's deeply ingrained in the best work. Even if the styles change slightly, there's something underneath that reveals who the photographer is. And I remember going, when I was an agent, I went to Deutsch LA, and I remember showing my photographer's folios to the head art buyer there. And she was really like, she'd been around for 1,000 years too. And she looked at each folio and she basically analyzed each photographer. And I was like blown away at how much she understood about the photographer behind the images without ever having met them. And I think that's what I do now. And it's just years of experience. And then, so we start there and we let the images do the work and reveal that. And it's never wrong, you know. There's tweaking, but it's usually pretty much there. And then from there, if people carry on working with me, I'll dive into trying to understand their why and their purpose and what drives them, what motivates them to do the work they do, but not even just the work they do, what motivates them to get up in the morning, you know, what motivates them to do anything really. It's usually something bigger than photography, and it's quite powerful as well. So we get into that too. Yeah.
Now the why thing's amazing, isn't it? I'd never ever in 20-something years ever thought about what my why. I just thought I just enjoyed photography. That genuinely was what I thought my why was. But then you kind of sent me over to the Simon Sinek TED Talk. Now it's the
Start with why.
Start with why. That's it. And if you haven't seen that, guys, go and listen to it or watch it. It's so interesting, and that will explain a little bit more about, you know, why the why is so important. And that's kind of when I really kind of was like, okay, right, I'm down this rabbit hole. Let's go. And it's such an interesting way. I'd never thought about it. I'm sure there are a lot of photographers also going, well, I just like cameras, you know, I just like photography.
Yeah.
And actually finding the why gives a deeper sense.
It's almost a form of therapy,
everything.
Isn't it? What you're offering, it's almost a form of therapy. This is why you get these tomes of emails. It's discovering something deeper about yourself and what motivates you and what drives you. And quite often, as you said, that can sit there for years, kind of unexplored. But it shows through in every piece of work that you do, because it's the nature of photography is it plays into your inner intuitions, your inner drivers, your inner judgments, micro judgments. Every single frame is you making these micro unconscious decisions. So it stands to reason that it would eventually show through with enough work as to what your motivators were.
Yeah, for sure. It's really interesting. And again, this is, I know advertising is kind of almost like the evil. I know it keeps a lot of us in business, but it's also, almost seen as the evil sort of thing. But I've learned so much from that world. And the reason I started looking into it and investigating purpose and why, which I started doing 14 years ago when I started my consulting business, because my husband, who worked in advertising, said to me, you know what brands are doing a lot these days? They're asking about purpose and why. The consumers are demanding it. Consumers want to know what's behind the brand, who's making the clothes, and why why they've even got this business. And so that prompted me to start really investigating it. And then I got really into it. And it's become, part of my brand, really. But that was where it came from. And I think that people in the advertising world are deeply interested in psychology because they're looking at human behavior. You can't sell something unless you understand how people behave. And I think that kind of seeped into me from very young, this interest in human behavior, this interest in why people do what they do. And I think I found the perfect job for me, quite honestly. But I do think that photographers are creative people, and creative people, you cannot separate the creativity from the person. It's all wrapped up in the same kind of package, really, you know.
Mhm.
And I think that photographers who try to separate it will fail miserably. You know, it's either going to result in work that's detached and unemotive and not doing the job, or they're just going to get caught down trying to do something they're not, you know, so they're not suited to. So it's worth asking that question. Why am I doing this?
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure, absolutely. Well, also, but it dictates things on a much bigger level as well, right? So obviously, it kind of affects every decision you make,
Mm.
including things like personal projects, right? So
Yes.
if you're not aligned properly and you're going off and doing personal projects because you think that might be sellable, or that might be good
Yes.
collateral to advertise with or something, well, that's not going to be the strongest work. It's not going to be the strongest project, and then it'll most likely fall flat, speaking from experience. So the let's talk about personal work, right?
Mm.
How important do you think, I would imagine probably very, but how important do you think personal work is to photographers, especially a photographer who is going maybe through this change,
Yeah.
asking for a friend?
um, I think personal work is actually the only marketing tool you've got as a photographer, you know, in the advertising world and commercial worlds, right? Not the
Mhm.
domestic world is different. But personal, I mean, in any world, you need to do it for yourself. It's what is going to keep you passionate. But in the advertising world, it's much more than that. It's about showing people that you have individual, independent thought, that you have an opinion, that it's your opportunity to say something, to stand out from, to do something differently to other people. So just in itself, you know, that question, why, how many times have you been to show your work to an ad agency creative, and they've said, why did you do this project? And I have photographers I've worked with who told me they believe they lost jobs because they honestly couldn't answer that question. It would just be, well, I don't know, I just liked the look of it. And that's the end of the conversation. So the why comes into your personal work. But personal work is not test work. So when you mentioned if you're making
Oh, good. I'm glad you're bringing this up. Yeah. Okay.
Because you said, okay, which is what a lot of photographers do. I'm going to make this personal project and I'm going to make it like this and this because I think the people I want to work with will like that. That's not a personal project. That's a test. I
Mhm.
think that whenever you imagine anyone looking over your shoulder at that work in the future or seeing that work, you're going to compromise. I don't think this is just for photography. I think this is writers, this is filmmakers, this is everybody. The minute you believe you're doing it for someone else, you've lost it. Because you're going to compromise. You're going to think, oh no, but the audience might not like that, or they might, and you're going to be second guessing the whole way. So
you can see that in a small way, even with people, you know, posting stuff to Instagram, for example. I mean, it's not a great example, but you see it with people that we all do it. You might have a picture that you really like and you think, well, is it going to fit with my feed? And this is where it's quite interesting because quite often when you do speak to people who come from a branding or an advertising background, as a photographer, you're being told you must be consistent. And then at the same time, but we want to see your personal work. And then it's like, well, that's where the interplay of something like social media, where that comes into it, of how you post things that you care about that might not actually sit with the rest of your work. And goes back to what you're saying about whether or not you're able to make that pivot gradually, or whether or not you wait until you've got enough of it to be able to say, actually, here's a new direction I'm taking. And it's how you curate stuff and put stuff out there. I mean, I kind of miss the days of Tumblr and things like that, where people would just kind of almost put stuff up and there'd be enough images on there to start to see patterns. Whereas nowadays, social media feels a bit more curated and a bit more like, I'm going to hold back.
I think it depends.
Well, there's also a worry, I think, about social media, isn't there? Because I think everyone posts. I mean, it's beyond the cringe, isn't it? Whatever you want is beyond the cringe, and I very rarely post to social media because I'll get it all ready and making it look nice, and then I'll suddenly go, do I? And then I'll forget about it and move on, and then about a week later I'll do this. I'll do the same. I do think maybe it's just me again, but there is that like worry about, is this going to fit? Is this going to be? And then that's
How's
the
this gonna
curation.
land?
Yeah, exactly.
I think there's a place for.
Are we doing social media wrong? Is the question, I guess.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah, I mean, so to jump back to personal versus tests, and then to social media. So I think there's a place for tests, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, they must happen. You know, there's going to be gaps you need to fill in your portfolio. There's going to be things your agent, you know, asks you to do more of, such as more lifestyle with 7-year-olds, I don't know, whatever, you know, more stuff around water. I don't know. Your agent's going, and I will often say to photographers I work with, there's a gap here. I think you need to bolster this area up. There's new equipment you want to test. There's new techniques you want to test. So tests have their place and they're very important. But I just think it's really important not to let them become the only way you make. They're not personal work. They have jobs to do. And with personal work, I think it's about leading from the front. So I do think, especially when you're more established, that your job is to make personal work, which you share. Perfect situation is you make personal work, you share it. People in the advertising world see it and think, God, that would be really good for this brand. Maybe you could do that for us. We want to hire you to do what you did for yourself, but we want to give that commercial application. And then from there, you know, you start to have a cohesive group of work, a body of work, which it doesn't matter whether it's paid or personal. There's going to be this intersecting area where they both are speaking the same language and people can get what you're going to give them. There's nothing worse than having personal work that looks like this and paid work that looks like this, because the default response that creatives have when they're looking to hire you is, oh, look at this lovely personal work this photographer's done. And then, oh, but if I hire him, he's going to do this. That's not what I want. I'm confused. See ya. So we don't want that to happen. So in a way, you kind of want it to kind of converge. Obviously, there's going to be pushing out into personal here, pushing into paid here, but you want it to converge a bit. And so the same needs to happen on social media. You know, it needs to feel like you're still, the voice is the same. The visual voice is the same visual voice. And I talk a lot about personal work I have 2 programs, both of which have personal work. One of them is entirely about personal projects and the other has a whole personal work section because it is your best marketing tool. And that's because, you know, we want to be leading with that work. However, I always say to my clients, make social media the very last place you put a completed personal project. And I think social media has a lot more usage, such as sharing your idea. Yes, I said that, sharing your idea. Put it out there, state your claim, ask for help, get people on board with what you're doing so that everyone knows you're doing that thing before you've even started.
Can we talk about this though? Because we've talked about it and it's such I think to a lot of people are going to hear that and go, I don't know. Shit. And I think a lot of people get very protective, and understandably so, over their ideas. What would you then say to people who've kind of got that kind of like had that reaction?
To photographers who react that way?
Yeah, kind of like the idea that you have to share the idea, before it's kind of finished. I think a lot of people, myself included, would have just done a project, finished the project, put the project up, and gone, "Here's the project,"
Yeah.
as opposed to, discussing it.
Photographers get so protective over their ideas, and I understand because ideas get stolen. But if you've developed that idea in a way that is thoughtful, intentional, you spend a bit of time thinking about it, then no one's going to be able to copy it or do it the way you do it. Because my belief is, and this is what we teach on the series project, which is the workshop we do, is that your approach to photographing rabbits in Peru will be...
We said not to talk about my new personal project.
It's going to be... Nice one. Yeah, so your approach to shooting whatever is going to be, if you bring in that deep why and that opinion and you work at it to get something that is uniquely yours, inject that into that project, then it won't matter. So the way we talk about it on the series project is that it's a simple sentence, fill in the gaps. I'm going to use this topic, e.g. rabbits in Peru, to talk about how I feel about environment or the political structure of something, or how children are being used for slave labor, whatever you want to say. But it's the what and the why. So you're literally, what you're photographing is just a vehicle for what you want to say. And no one person will say the same thing in the same way. And often, if you have a strong enough idea, there'll be multiple ways you can execute it. It's just about the idea is king. If you start with the visual look, and this is another subject altogether, if you start with, oh, that would look nice, I'm going to photograph that. It's not a personal project. It's just a thing you're photographing.
Scratching an itch, right? You just want to go off and do it. I think also it's frustrating because as photographers, we do have the ability to just go off and do that. And, I think a lot of us just enjoy shooting. So I will go off and set tests up in the studio. And then, people like yourself will go, what was that for? And I go, just fancied it. Just wanted to do it. Whereas actually it doesn't add anything.
I do think there is a place for that, though, because there's a form of experimentation, and you have to explore those itches, for want of a better metaphor, because
there's a doctor for that, Greg.
Because you just don't know what are you going to find out you've got.
Yeah.
Again, there's a doctor for that.
Who knows? Yeah. No, I agree. 100% agree, Greg. I think those itches have to be scratched for sure. And
but they're more tests then, really.
Yeah, but there's a place for that too, And if you enjoy it, then and think, oh, I've done something great here, then maybe you can start to develop something with more depth that you can, use that technique or that thing for. Or you can just leave it. It's fine. There's a Japanese, actually it's a Buddhist expression called shoshin, and it means beginner's mind. And sometimes with photographers, I'll just say, you need to develop the shoshin method again. You just need to take your camera out and pretend you know nothing and look at the world with this. It's the idea being that you forget everything you've ever learned and been taught, and you revisit the world with your camera in this way of this fresh, new, oh, what's that thing? Oh, it's a tree. But the idea is you don't know the name of anything anymore. You kind of come at it with this really beginner's mind. And that can really freshen up your practice. And there is nothing wrong with that.
Which photography is play. It's learning to play again.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. They're all ways in, aren't they?
To play devil's advocate here, it is hard to justify the time to play, especially when you're running a business. The economy is kind of tough for photographers at the minute. To then kind of justify, I shouldn't do the marketing. I'll go off and have a bit of a play. I know obviously makes it sound frivolous, and I know how important it is, but I wouldn't be the only one listening to this show who'd be like, yeah, I definitely don't prioritize myself or my kind of, itches. So it is kind of, well, or the, or the, or the personal work, or the tests, or anything like that. It's. What would you say to a photographer like that who is saying there's
Could
more
do
of
that,
a
but
priority?
I've got a VAT return to do today, so
Well,
I don't have
yeah,
time to
exactly.
go do this. Yeah,
or something like that.
Yeah, I think the two biggest reasons or excuses I hear for photographers not making personal work is they're too busy or they're too broke.
Mm-hmm.
They have to have loads of money to be able to hire the people they need and make it the shoot they want it to be, which is actually not always the truth. Mostly projects can be made without an entire production team. And the busy thing is when photographers get busy, but often it's high turnover, but it's not the work they love doing. And they're not making space for the work they do love doing so they can start driving the bus again. So it's a catch-22. One of the things I talk about on my mentoring program, the boot camp that you talked about, is I encourage photographers to start ongoing long-term projects that they can just be working on when they have the gaps in between, and making sure they're projects that are achievable, whether they're busy or whether they're broke. And I could give you countless examples of projects that have been done in this way and led to really great things. And I'm sure you are aware of many long-term projects. But I always say to photographers, start in your own backyard. Start in your neighborhood or somewhere accessible. Find something that's easy to achieve. And ultimately, again, the idea will carry it through. When you know what you're going to shoot, you can start to create a structure that's repeatable and easy to manage. So you want to remove as much decision fatigue as possible. That's the tiring bit. So you're doing that all through your day and in your job. You don't need to have that added on. So if you've put the thought and the intention into what you're going to talk about and what you're going to photograph, then you could take that. You can start in your own backyard, but I often encourage them to do things that they can start in their own backyard, but they can carry on globally. So they can take one day extra on their holiday and carry it on there. They can, their trip to Fiji or their trip to wherever, and just build on and create something that grows and becomes just this kind of regular shower. Like, you make time to have a shower every day, make time to make photographs.
Every day?
That's an interesting thing, though, I think a lot of photographers, myself included, I think sometimes struggle. I definitely struggle with the justifying making time to go shoot stuff. And I often have kind of New Year's resolution that I'm going to do, one day a week, I'm going to take my lunch hour and I'm going to go shoot this thing close by to the studio, which is easy enough to get access to, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's always an excuse that comes up. The other thing, though, is I'm interested do you have any techniques that you work on with photographers to even kind of explore potential ideas? Because we've discussed on the podcast before things like the photographer's playbook, which is a fantastic
great.
book of ideas of how you can even spark the initial ideas. Do you have anything that you found when you've worked with photographers that's helped photographers develop those initial ideas or kind of interests, threads to pull?
Yeah, I mean, the series project is all that. It's 6 weeks on conceptualizing a project. It's a whole process.
Right, okay.
And I do that and I won't get into that. I can talk to you about a few of those techniques, but I do need to mention that I do that with a business partner, Billy Plummer, who's a photographer who was an advertising creative for many years. And he was the CD of Saatchi's China, and he started out in London as well. He's another Brit. He lives in Australia, and he's a very, very successful advertising photographer. He works on some big jobs around the world. I think he shares the same producer as Tom does, Dawn
He does.
Moretti. Yep.
Yep.
And
Lovely, Dawn.
he has worked at all the top ad agencies where they literally teach those creators how to come up with ideas. They've had to learn it. It's a skill you have to develop and learn. And most photographers aren't given that skill. And so they come at these projects with some of the ways we've been talking. Oh, that looks good. I'll photograph that. Or I want to try this new lens out. And so we teach that. And a lot of photographers who've attended say it's like having your brain taken out with stuff and put back in again, because it's such a completely different approach to making personal work. But they all have won tons of awards. So it's definitely proven itself, as a system. But so I think one of the keys of that system is that we start with a mind map. We start with not thinking visually, although, I know you can't help thinking visually when you're a visual person, but instead of going straight to, oh, I want to shoot something that looks like this, it's a case of, no, I want to say this. So every year we choose a location and we say, we're going to this place, and next year we're going to Chiang Mai, and we say, right, you just think about all of the things that appeal to you about Chiang Mai. Start looking, just start thinking about just investigating, do your research, and really do your research and go down some rabbit holes and explore the things that are speaking to you and calling you. And, something that speaks to you guys might not speak to someone else, so it's just finding your way into a topic and then understanding.
How many people do that course?
10, no more than 10. Between
do you ever have it when photographers end up shooting the same projects, or do they all end up doing the different things?
That's such a good question. So sometimes the same themes come up, right? So we had two people on one. Well, actually, yeah. So we went to Marrakesh this year, and in the end, we had about 4 photographers that were making a commentary on the gender status over there, the sort of the repression of women, the way that they are made to wear burqas, and the men are in charge and the men make the decisions, and there's a lot of rules there, as you know, if you've been to Morocco. And Marrakesh is quite traditional as well, so it's particularly prevalent there. And every single photographer, I think about 4 out of the 9 or 5 out of the 9 photographers made stories that were a comment on that. But each of them were completely different projects. One of them, one woman went into the homes of home of a family. They had a home in the country and a home or their family in the country, and they had their city home. And she went into both their homes and traveled with them to the countryside and compared those lifestyles. That was really just focusing her lens on the mother and the children. And another photographer literally did a still life of Moroccan bread, and each still life image was about the repression. She felt like bread is this. She talked about it as being bread being a staple of the diet there, and you rely on it, but it's always the afterthought. It's there, but it's just assumed. And she compared that to how women are treated. And so she did really beautiful little sort of still lives where, one of them, there was a cloth over the bread, and there's the top dog, that's the guy. And it just made these really interesting still lives. And you can see how different those two projects are. And then someone else did a version where he captured sort of the men looking a little bit sinister and the women just scurrying around doing all the jobs. And so everyone had a different way into that, but it was all about the same thing,
Right.
So that's an example of how everyone has their own voice, and it can always be used in your own way. And then you have your own opinions on top of that. So I don't think it's a problem, which is why I think this whole sharing thing isn't an issue if photographers just come to terms with it.
Yes, because I guess it's never going to be the same. I mean, I've had, I won't go into that. Actually, realizing what I was just about to bring up, but it's frustrating though when you do post something and then somebody else maybe takes too much inspiration from it. So I do understand that people can hold back, but at the same time, yes, I now completely agree about the sharing thing. I think it can only be a benefit, really.
Well, I think the best example I have of that, and it's not the only one, but it's the best one, is a photographer I worked with in New York who had suffered from depression. And when we identified his style and feel, it was all about sort of finding the light from the dark. He often lit the subject and then it dropped back to darkness. And so it was all about finding the light. That was his whole sort of visual voice. And he decided to do a series that meant something to him. So it had that depth. And he wanted to speak about depression. And he decided to do a project, ongoing personal project, where he photographed people who were suffering with depression, but found a release through a sport or a happy place they went to, where they went to find that relief. And he did exactly what I suggested, which is share it on. He had the idea, his website was looking good, everything was consistent. We understood his look and feel. And he made this announcement on social media, and I was blown away. He basically admitted that he'd been suicidal 8 years previously, and medication had saved his life. He'd actually tried to take his own life. And because of that, he wanted to make a project that showed the happy places that people, blah, blah, blah. So that's what he did. And he posted it on Facebook publicly. And he was looking for talent. He was casting, basically. He was asking for help. This is what I say to do when you're sharing. Discuss your idea, introduce it, ask for help. And loads of people came on board. You'd be amazed. People love to help. So loads of people came on board with, oh, yes, I suffer from that. I'd love to, or my sister or my brother or whatever. I'd love to be a part of this. And one of the people who posted on there was the marketing director of a really well-known fast-moving consumer goods brand. It was Johnson & Johnson or one of those. It turns out they were basically about to release a medication for depression. And she literally posted on there, I want to be involved in this project. Can you please contact me? And they ended up buying the entire idea and paying him to photograph it. And he got...
That's a dream scenario, isn't it?
Yeah. And the whole, which is insane, right? And now that doesn't happen to most people, but you can see the power of sharing far surpasses the power of the debilitating hiding behind this precious kind of wall where everything is kept inside and nothing's allowed out. It's not healthy.
No,
not healthy at all.
To get that collaboration as well, that you potentially get, as you said, from people, even if it hadn't been picked up as this particular one was, just to get those other ideas that kind of helps create, take something and make it bigger than the sum of its parts, Yeah. You don't get that if you hold on to it.
The world's never been so small, right? You never know who might reshare that or someone else might pick it up, and you never know who's going to see this. So it's super interesting. Super interesting.
One of the pillars of happiness is to help, right? People like to help. So if you ask for help, people come on board. It's incredible. Everyone wants to have skin in the game, to feel that they had a part of that. You know how it is when you make an ad and someone's partner, the managing director of the company's partner, says, oh, couldn't you have done that? And, everyone wants to feel like they had a go at something. So you can harness that in a good way.
Mm-hmm. No, nice. Yeah, no, it's, I think for a lot of people, it will take a bit of a mind shift. I think for sure it's taken me a bit of a mind shift, but it is super interesting. Well, we're coming up to the hour mark. The trouble is, you and I could chat for hours. as as you know. But it would be great if somebody, and this is going to put you on the spot a tiny bit, and I can only apologize. If somebody is feeling really stuck, like really, really stuck, would there be one kind of like super high level idea that maybe you could just like, or an exercise where we talked about things like mind maps and stuff like that. Is there anything they can do to try and, help themselves kind of break out of it?
And are you talking about stuck making personal work or just stuck in their career?
Well, I think a lot of people will be stuck with personal work because they are stuck in their career.
Yeah.
I feel like it all comes together, doesn't it? I feel like if you get to a point where you're feeling stuck, you feel stuck on so many levels. You don't just feel stuck doing personal work. I very rarely feel like mega creative doing my commercial work, but then just not, it all kind of tends to come hand in hand, doesn't it? So I guess stuck in general. Not obviously stuck in like a revolving door or something, because obviously that's a fairly different person you'd want to ask. I mean, I'm sure you're very good at getting people out of revolving doors, but if there was kind of one kind of like super tip, I know it's
I
a bit of an open-ended question.
The super tip is to shoot personal work, right? That's where I always point people back to if they're stuck in their career or not making work they love. I always point them back to, well, make the work you love. Like, what do you love doing? So sometimes one of the questions I ask photographers when I first meet with them is, imagine you had all the money you needed for the rest of your life. What part would photography play in that? And would it play a part? Because that eliminates the photographers who they need to move on. Some photographers need to stop and move on. There's that, right? Sometimes it is time to stop and admit that and kind of go, yeah, it's okay. But if you would do it, if money wasn't an object and you need to look at what you would do. And ask yourself that question: what would I do if I had all the money in the world and and geography wasn't an issue, and visas weren't an issue, and politics weren't an issue, and money wasn't an issue? What would I make? That's a really powerful question, because you're removing the classic obstacles, that get in the way. Even kids, that have to go to certain schools. I suggested this to a photographer once, and they went, "No, we can't. I want to work in New York, but I can't go to New York because my kid's at this special school." And then they went off and did some research and found out the school for that condition was in, it's just, there's always a solution. So that's a really good starting spot. That's where I take a lot of photographers to when they're floundering. And then go make it. Go make that work that you want to make. I so often hear from photographers, oh, I'm just getting this terrible work and it's not the work I want to be making. And I ask them what they want to make, and I can't see it anywhere. There's none of it.
Right.
There's none on their website. They don't have, you're not going to get work like that if you don't make it. You have to drive the bus. It's, this whole idea of sitting twiddling your thumbs, waiting for the perfect job to arrive it doesn't work in the freelance world, does it? You have to kind of lead the way, show people where you want to go. And then there are a few times I've actually done probably photographer's playbook stuff, but one of them was, I'm just going to suggest you put your camera down and don't use your camera for a month unless you're working, Just go, I'm letting it go. I'm not taking it on every holiday. I'm just going to put it down, and actually force yourself to not pick up the camera can sometimes be what you need to get back to it again. I've sometimes said to photographers, put down your pro cameras, pick up an iPhone, just snap stuff that you see without the pressure of thinking about how, just do it. And sometimes that's rekindled the passion, and we've found something that they saw through their phone but didn't really, it was too complicated or overwhelming to set up for themselves. So, and then the Shojin approach, there's lots of ways that the photographer's playbook is amazing for that. Yeah.
Also, would there be any not necessarily advice, but if there's like some kind words, because I think so. I've had some pretty bleak. Quickly, not with you. I've had some pretty bleak conversations with some photographers recently, and not a lot, but a couple of them. I kind of just really wanted to just kind of give a hug and just be like, look, just keep at it. If you meet people who really do feel like they're kind of on properly on the skids, is it just you've got to pull yourself up? You got to, well, not pull yourself up, but you got to really try and find the love of it again. Because the trouble is with the business side of it, it really can knock.
Yeah.
It's a very hard job, right? You've got this ultra creative side on this side, and then you've got to be a good business runner on this side, and they don't massively marry up that well. You tend to either be ultra creative and terrible at the business, or terrible at the business and not that creative, or you're sort of like me in the middle and you kind of go, well, I'm kind of okay there and I'm relatively all right there. And then I kind of feel a lot of people maybe on the extremes get maybe disillusioned or kind of like overwhelmed or down. Not really entirely sure what the question is there, but is more kind of like, what would you just...
Would you just give us some kind words?
Yeah, just need some encouragement, mate.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, I see that a lot. I mean, book a discovery call with me. It'll help.
Mm-hmm.
That's
it
free.
will. Let me tell you that, yeah.
And I mean, what I can offer for that is I have a weekly newsletter that goes out. Most photographers write to me all the time and tell me that it's the only one they open because it's uplifting and it's kind of gives them a little bit of hope. A lot of the time I'm just saying, you've got this, just keep going, just keep trying, just keep showing up. That's a big one. Just keep showing up. That's massive. I've been writing a weekly email for 10 years now and just keep showing up, and so yeah, sign up to that. Book a discovery call with me to kind of get that clarity again. I've got I do free webinars that, like, I'm doing one, and I don't know whether it'll, obviously I do different ones through the year, but I'm doing one in a few weeks, which is about defining your direction again and really thinking about what it is you want so you can start piloting the boat again. There's lots of things that I do to help with that.
Well, now, if you tell us the date, we have to get this out before that date. When's shit? Hang on.
It's going to be the 3rd of December, my time. So it'll be the 2nd of December, your time. Yeah.
We can get this out just before.
Okay, I'll make it earlier in the day.
So in a couple of days, there's something happening, guys.
Yeah.
So that would be good. I will also quickly vouch for your email. I very rarely, so the reason we work together now is mainly because you said yes, but obviously I had your emails for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years.
Oh, okay.
And
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. I think I told you when we started. No, did I not?
I thought someone shared it with you. I didn't realize.
Yeah, but then I signed up.
Yeah,
and then I got your messages, and I was like, yeah, actually, it genuinely felt like your tone in the emails, as I've told you many times, is excellent. It really does feel like you are talking straight to someone and very much on our level. Yeah. So even if you guys don't want to do a call with Christina, definitely sign up to the emails because they're excellent.
Where can listeners find that on your website? Obviously,
that is a good point.
It's called Stay in the Loop. Yeah, something. I think it's ChristinaForce.net /stay in the loop.
Okie dokie.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
We'll link to it anyway in the show notes, so don't worry too much.
A link. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect, lovely. So I kind of feel like my medication might be wearing off and I'm starting to ramble. It is quite late because obviously you're in New Zealand, so apologies for the questions that didn't really have a question. That was not necessarily my intention. I started the sentence with, much like this one, with good intention. But let's maybe start wrapping this up. So we do with every guest the 2 questions. We obviously have stranded you on a desert island. It's much smaller than the islands of New Zealand, obviously. Now, you, I don't think, take photographs much, right?
No,
Am I right in
no.
thinking?
Well, I studied photography a little bit. I went to St Albans
Right.
College of Art, but I decided I couldn't stand all the tech stuff, and the darkroom bored me, and I couldn't create the images I wanted to make.
Well, that's good.
I thought you were going to say you couldn't stand all the photographers. I was like, that's not a good start.
I imagine.
No, I like photography.
But I'd agree.
So would you then have a camera for the desert island, or is it more just a book situation?
Well, both. But I used to have.
Oh my God, both. Are you going to have a spy camera in a book?
My first camera, which I'm very it's ancient. I'm a bit embarrassed. But then I also noticed that you had a guest, I think it was the agent that you interviewed, who said the same thing. It was really interesting because my first camera was an Olympus OM10.
Love it.
And I
this would have been
loved
James Gerard Jones, perhaps.
Yeah,
it was,
JJJ.
yes. I loved it. So maybe that, but probably an iPhone. And I do take photos with my iPhone, but it's just easy.
It's the best camera you've got with you, right?
Yep. A bit boring, I know.
So,
yeah. And then,
no, not at all, not at all. Also, you talk about being ancient. I mean, we all have, just collections of ancient cameras here. I've got a box Brownie from some time. I've got my grandmother's, when she passed, she lent me.
So that occasion's definitely wearing off, isn't it?
She did not lend me the camera. My God. But yeah, no, so don't worry about age of cameras. Oh my God, I feel drunk. I am not.
That's funny.
So sorry. So go on. I would love to hear what book you're going to be taking.
Oh, book. Oh gosh. Yeah. So you said photography book, right?
Well, preferably.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
to be quite honest,
we do skew this chat more towards photography maybe than we should.
Well, to be quite honest, I'll just read a good fiction. I'd read a good paperback, really beautifully written fiction, which has nothing to do with photography necessarily, but often they have things to do with behavior of people. And so I guess it's not really a photography book, but I would probably say The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And even though that's not for photographers specifically, it's actually sort of for writers, but the creative process is really important. And he talks a lot about resistance. And I think that's massive in the photography community. I just think it's understanding why you resist sharing your work, getting it out there, being visible. And it's mostly about fear. And so I talk about that on some of my webinars and things, and it really resonates with photographers. So that's a great book. But if we're talking about photography, I just thought I'd show you what I'm reading at the moment, but it wouldn't come to a desert island because it's too big. But I've just been getting into Slim Aarons.
Oh, nice.
Wow, that is a sizable book, isn't it?
A really brilliant book. And
either that or you're very small. We actually never met in person, so...
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah, it's just, I love it. I love Slim Aarons at the moment.
Somebody described him the other day as almost like the original Instagram photographer, in the sense that a lot of the pictures of the rich and famous kind of living their lives was almost like this collaborative effort between, the subjects who wanted to present themselves in a certain way and him who wanted access to that world. And so what you kind of ended up with is these kind of them presenting themselves to his camera, but in a way that you almost see with the kind of influencer lifestyle now on social media. But of course, this is in the 50s and 60s. Yeah. So it's a really interesting little insight into a particular sliver of society.
It is. And
interesting.
Yeah, I think he's, really immersed himself into that society. And I think the way he photographed is becoming kind of quite relevant again now. It's that kind of really raw, honest study of people. I can't help myself. I love reading about
very
psychology.
Interesting origin story as well. doesn't he?
Yes,
Is it?
he went to war, didn't he? Yeah. Is that what you were going to say?
Well, there was an element of it, but there was also an element of, from what I understand, he kind of created. He was slightly selective with his memories, and it basically was because he felt like he needed to have this big backstory in order to get the access. But the reality of it was actually very different, and it didn't come out until years later. So I think there's definitely a good film to be made in his life at some point, or a Netflix series just to really get into the juicy details. Plus,
yes,
it
I'd like
amazing.
to know more about that.
Yes, I'd like to film that, because imagine the locations you get to go to.
Oh my God! Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No. It's,
okay. Well, listen,
so people, behavior, psychology.
Yeah. Yeah, brilliant. Very fitting. I was going to
say this one is similar to The War on Art, The Artist's Way, not aimed at photographers as such, aimed predominantly at writers, but there's so much I think people can take away from it, you know. From anybody who's trying to think creatively, of you know, it's useful. You think outside the box, don't necessarily stick with the photography world because it's quite narrow.
Yeah.
While we are on the chat of fitting books, I look up here and was trying to figure out if I had one to say, yeah, I've got a fitting book as well. And then obviously I have up here the world's largest collections of minimalism and essentialism books.
Oh, so, that's a good book, isn't it? Essentialism. That's a great book.
Yes, Christina, it is excellent. But so I've got that. I've got minimalism. I've got clear the decks. I have got a million books up there about making space. So obviously they work.
Or
I am, to be fair, as you know, learning to read. So
or take your medication. There's that.
Well, quite exactly.
And forget the books.
Exactly. And so listen, let us wrap up. Can I just say a big thank you? Apologies if I've been slightly silly. I've obviously been thrilled to have you on. And thank you ever so much for making the time. Now, listen, where can people find you? We've already talked about your website, ChristinaForce.net.
Instagram, Christina.Force. LinkedIn. I don't know. I'd have to look that up. We can put it in the show notes.
We can put it in the show notes. Yep. Perfect.
Free webinars I run every now and again. I run free webinars. They're worth signing up for. And
now is that that's on the newsletter, isn't it?
Yes, that's the thing with the email list. You get all that stuff and workshops coming up and all sorts. Yeah, there's always something.
100%, and it is well worth signing up to the emails. Just even if you just want to just get a weekly nice kind of inspirational email, they're brilliant, and then the webinars are great as well. So wholeheartedly recommend. I think Christine is amazing. So thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, guys.
Really appreciate it.
It was lovely to be invited. And
it was lovely to be invited, but the experience of it, wow, that was shit.
This was great too. It's been fun. I love it. That was a terrible. I was trying to be really polite, and it came out all wrong. It was lovely to be invited. She says, backing away. Thank you for having me.
I had to. You are most welcome. Thank you so much for coming on.